Okay, I've just started recording. This is the first of our online Solid Edge training for those of you on the 45-day trial. As I just mentioned, these are going to be recorded, so use these as kind of a reference to go back and see what's going on. In subsequent lessons, we're going to be going through the exercises in the Getting Started guide. I'm also going to provide some tips and tricks in addition to what's in the guide, and that's just going to serve as a reference point for you guys to work through that and get familiar with Solid Edge. In this particular lesson, we're just going to talk about downloading the license, installing the program, and familiarizing yourself with the interface. So I know some of you have already installed the program. A lot of you have discs if you attended one of our Pub Lunch events. Some of you still need licenses or need to download licenses, so I'll just show you how that works. To get there, and I think Patrick would have sent you a link, you need to go to www.solidedge.com or type Solid Edge in Google, and that'll take you to the Solid Edge homepage. Now, on the homepage, there's a link to start the free trial, the Solid Edge free trial. And when you hit that link, it's going to ask you to enter your information. Once you do that, and this is sort of where I got today, you'll enter the information and you'll be led to a page that says Processing Request. This is about as far as I got today. Now, what we've heard from Siemens is that they are experiencing a really high volume of people getting in and trying out this 45-day trial. So there's a delay in between when you enter that information and when you get your license. Now, you will right away get an email that looks kind of like this. Thank you for your interest in Solid Edge. But it should be followed with an email with your license file. Now, if you get tired of waiting, all you need to do is get in contact with us, either myself or Patrick, or the info@edgecanada.ca information email address, and we can send you a license right away. So don't worry if your license doesn't come. We've got one for you. It's just a nice thing to have because if you set this up with your info, you then have access to things like the online help and things like that. So I'll talk a bit about the message boards afterwards. So everyone should have this document, which will walk you through the installation of Solid Edge. Basically, it's a pretty straightforward process, and the easiest thing is just to install it with the default settings. It's a 32-bit application, so the trial demo, rather, is a 32-bit application. Solid Edge, of course, is available in 32-bit and 64-bit, but it will install for you. By default, the only catch in the installation process is that the default setting is have all your templates in ISO format, and that just is the default units of measurement that are in there. Now I'm going to show you how you can access ANSI if you work in ANSI, but the default installation for Solid Edge is ISO. It can be changed afterwards, but if you want when you're installing to switch that, and it's pretty upfront in the installation process, you can switch that to ANSI or JIS or anything you want. So the installation is straightforward. Once you get your license file, and again, this will be emailed to you by Siemens when you fill out the form in the 45-day license trial, or if you're, as I said, there's a bit of a backlog in Siemens getting people their licenses. So if you get tired of waiting, just fire us an email. We've got licenses that we can send you. When you do get that license, what you need to do, and this is again detailed in the installation guide, but you need to save that license somewhere on your computer where it's going to be safe. So I've created a directory here on my desktop called Solid Edge License. And inside that directory, I've put in this license file. And the license file is a .dat format. So once you have your license, save it to a directory. And then the last step is this. Solid Edge is installed on your machine, and you're going to see it under All Programs, Solid Edge ST4. And then in there, the last step, and this is again detailed in the installation guide, is go into licensing, and under license utility, just fire that up. And basically in the first option, it's going to ask you to browse for your license file. So you just hit the browse button and you browse to the location, which is, again, I put it in Solid Edge license file, and select the DAT file. So that's how you access the Solid Edge license file. Once that's done, Solid Edge should fire up. So let's go ahead and do that. And you should get a desktop icon. It'll also appear in the program folders. And we'll fire up Solid Edge here. Okay, so once you're up and running, you've got Solid Edge installed, you've got your license file, and again, you can contact Edge Design Systems directly if you have any difficulty in that process. Once you're in this, this will be the Solid Edge environment that you see. So let's start with the basics. In Solid Edge, we have different environments, and there's basically 4 environments. We've got part, sheet metal, an assembly, and the draft environment. Now, don't worry about the Weldman environment. That's just a carryover from older versions when welds were defined separately. They're in assembly now. So really the only environments you need to worry about are part, sheet metal, and assembly. So a part is pretty straightforward, and my definition of a part in the context of 3D CAD is it's anything that's created from a single piece of material. And the reason is because when you create a part, as you're going to see, you define what the material is, and that will determine things like your mass based on the volume of your part and things like that. So you want to make sure that you if you are designing, for example, a welded assembly, that could be made out of 2 different pieces of stock. You could have 2 types of steel welded together. So even something as simple as that, which you might consider a part, would be an assembly in a 3D CAD environment. And an assembly is just sort of a, here's a collection of parts and here's how they go together. That's sort of how it works. Sheet metal is a single part constructed from sheet metal, and that has specific sheet metal features and applications in that. And a draft is just your 2D representation. 90% of us here have to give our data to somebody, pass it either to the shop floor or to the customer or to the manufacturer, and generally 90% of us will pass that off in a 2D format, in a drawing format. So a draft captures your 3D data in a 2D format. So I'm going to go, so here's the welcome screen in Solid Edge. And you see we've got a couple of things we can access from this welcome screen. We've got access to the tutorials as well as some getting started exercises that we can do. These are actually the same getting started exercises as you have in your guide, so you can access them electronically here. Similarly, you've got access to the tutorials and the self-paced training, and I'll go into a little more detail about what those look like. You've also got a list of recent documents. These are parts that I've recently been working on, and you can see them all there, as well as some links, some web links like technical support in the home page. Clicking on any one of these will create a new either part, sheet metal, assembly, etc. And right now you see that I've got all ANSI standards. I've got my ANSI template showing. Depending on how you installed Solid Edge, you might see ISO template showing there. So clicking on one of these will start a new part. Or whatever the document is. There's more commands up here in the application button. So this button is basically like the file menu. In here you're going to find things like new and open, recent documents, all that. And the content of this menu will change depending what environment you're in. So again, if I go to new, you'll see I get a window, and there again are my default templates, my ANSI part, ANSI sheet metal, etc. You're going to find in Solid Edge there's a couple of ways to do just about everything, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. One thing we can do is instead of clicking on these to create a new part, I can click right on the new icon over here on this side. And if I do that, that's going to bring up much more choice of documents that I can create. So again, in the General tab, I'll have my default templates. If I go into More, now I have access to different templates of drawing standards for each of the environments in Solid Edge. So for example, if my defaults are set to ANSI inches, I can find an ANSI millimeter part in here. Or I can scroll down and find an ISO part down here. So if you don't have the template or unit standard that you want to work with in the welcome screen, this is where it's created. And I'll just show you that one more time. It's under the application button. Click directly on New, and then you want to navigate to the More tab. And that's where you're going to find, and again, all of these can be changed. Your default templates can be changed, but all these determine is the environment you're working in, part, sheet metal, assembly, and the units that are the default units set in there. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create, well, let's first talk about the 3D environment. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into the open command. And that's where I'm going to open an existing document. So here in the open command, you see that I can see a number of different solid edge parts, and they've each got their different icons. This is an assembly, for example. I get a preview in the corner. This is a draft. So if you can't see the file you're after, just make sure that you've got the file type set to the correct thing. So for example, if I change that to be part documents, I'm only going to see part documents in my preview. A good place to kind of have it set to is all solid edge documents. But you also notice looking at here, this is the type of files that you can open directly with solid edge using the open command. So you can really open just about any type of major 3D data. I'm going to set this to all solid edge documents so I can see all the solid edge files that I can open. And I want to open this valve housing. This part was also sent to you in the email that went out this morning. So if you've saved it, that attachment to a directory, you can open this up and try this out. So I'm going to highlight this and hit the Open button. And that's going to open this single part up in the solid edge part environment. So here we are in the part environment here. So let's get a little bit of familiarization with what we're looking at in the solid edge 3D part environment. So the first thing you note is that your commands are arranged on tabs. So the home tab has 90% of the commands you're going to use on a day-to-day basis, but there are more tabs in here. Sketching, inspect is a handy one because that'll give you things like your mass properties. This particular part weighs 2.5 kilograms. This is set in obviously a metric standard. So a lot of tools in here, and all these are available on tabs. Now, over on this side, we have what we call the Pathfinder. That's this vertical bar here. And what this will be is it will depend on what environment you're in. In an assembly, this will show you all the parts that make up that assembly and allow you to select them or hide them as you go along. In addition, in the part environment, this will show you the steps you took to create the part. So, I see a hole here, and I've got a set of holes in there. There's another set of holes up here, and I can kind of scroll through here and mouse over each of these features to show me, what steps were created. And I can use these to select those features. In addition, I can also select the features just by clicking on them graphically in the 3D interface. Now, the most important area when you're starting out in Solid Edge is the Help menu, and that's over here. It's kind of hidden, but it's up here in the corner, and it is this little purple book. Notice that as I mouse over anything in the Solid Edge environment, it'll give me an expanded description of what that command is, if you just let your mouse kind of rest over that. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a feedback if you're uncertain of what you're clicking on. So mousing over the help, I see that that is the help, and if I click that, that's going to open up in this window over here. So with this window open, it's a good time to point out that this interface that we have in front of us is entirely customizable. You can customize this in any way, and one of the ways you can customize it is by how the windows function. So you see I've got this little pin command over here. Sorry, GoToMeeting's in my way. I can pin this, I can unpin that. And what that means is that window is going to hang over on the side as a tab, and if I bring my mouse over it, it'll slide open. So that's what that little pin command does. That's the auto hide command. Similarly, if I do pin that down, I can actually click and drag this window and move it wherever I want in the interface. You see I'm going to get these compass points, and if I kind of release on one of those compass points, it's going to dock my window to that appropriate compass points. So in addition to that, all these toolbars can be customized. You can create your own toolbars in the customization. You can put commands that you frequently use on a toolbar and access them. So that's the help window over there. And if you got a bit of a lag, it's because there we go. Yeah, GoToMeeting and this window docking don't typically get along. So what else have we got in this 3D environment here? Well, over here on the bottom, and I'm just going to close this window for now. Over here on the bottom we've got our view commands, and it's important to kind of wrap your head around navigating in 3D space. So the very first one is zoom area. You see I've moused over that. It's giving me feedback of what that command does, and this is a pretty simple command. I'll click on this once and I get kind of this crosshair. And basically what that's going to let me do is click and drag to create a region, and it will zoom into that box that I create. So that's a handy tool to kind of get up close to some of the geometry here. The next command on the bar down here is the zoom command, and if I click that, my cursor becomes a magnifying glass, and left clicking and holding while moving my mouse either up or down will zoom either in and out. Another way to access this command, sort of a shortcut, is to roll your mouse wheel. Rolling your mouse wheel will do the same thing. The next command is a handy one, and that's fit to screen. And what I'll do is if I click that once, it'll fit my model back into the screen so everything is shown. Up next is pan, pretty straightforward. Click and drag, and I can pan back and forth. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is the rotate command. If I click that, I can rotate my part around. And sort of depending on where I click, that'll be my center of rotation. You see that we can also click about edges and rotate the part about an edge. So this is how you sort of get a view of a different angle of your part, a different side of your part using the rotate command. Now, it's obviously cumbersome to keep kind of reaching down and back in here, so there are some shortcuts. The first you're going to notice is that if you click and hold your middle mouse button, that's also the rotate command. So that's a bit faster. The other thing we have is we have keyboard and right mouse click combinations. So, and I sent this in the original document, the installation, or sorry, that was the document that went out this morning. We sent one out that has sort of a cheat sheet of the keyboard commands, and these are the ones that when you get more experience you're going to use the most often. So the first one is that if you hold down Shift and hold down right click, moving your mouse in any direction will create that rotate. Holding down Control and your right click will zoom, and holding down Control Shift at the same time will pan. So that combination of Control or Shift, or both Control or Shift, as well as holding your right mouse, will give you the combinations of zooming, panning, and rotating that you need to navigate in 3D. And again, this is all detailed on that sheet that we sent out earlier today. So, print that off, stick it beside you, and that's kind of a reference guide so you don't have to keep going back and using these commands. The other single most important, well, before I go into this, let's go into the last thing on here. We have our view orientations. If you click this, you're going to see different orientations of your part that you can kind of snap to, front, left, back, top, as well as isometric, dimetric, and trimetric. So these views are, a quick way to get back into a nice ordered view. Oftentimes when people are starting out in Solid Edge, they'll end up zooming way in and then maybe rotating, and they won't even know where they are. The quickest way to get out of that is to go into your saved view orientations and go back to an isometric or trimetric. Another shortcut, and again, this is on the cheat sheet that we sent out, is to hit Control and I, because that fast commands you back into isometric. So if you get lost rotating around, all you have to remember is Control and I. All right. Let's look at some of the help features that are available to the new user. So, and I want to again hit that help index to open up my help window, and I want to go down into some of these options down here. So the first I want to click on is the Solid Edge tutorials. You click on this and you'll open up a whole whack of tutorials that you can work through. So clicking on any one of these will open up the associated file and an HTML interface that will step you through all the processes. If you want a little bit more in-depth, you can try the Solid Edge self-paced training. I mean, this is basically Solid Edge University. You click on this and it's going to open up a web browser, and in that is going to be a series of courses that go into real detail on working with Solid Edge. So, you can start with the sketching and work your way up all the way down to, exploding, rendering, animating, and all the advanced features. So that's all in there. Now that's, fairly intense and time consuming, but that would be sort of the learning path for a new user to get up to an advanced modeling stage. Stuff that's more relevant to our users here would be the help commands. So I want to show you the first one is context help. This is a really handy command. So if I click this, you're going to see that my cursor has a little question mark beside it. And now when I click on a command like this thin wall, I want to know what this thin wall does. Clicking on that will bring up the help menu of that command. And then you can use the links to take a look at exactly how that command functions. And the help file in Solid Edge is really in-depth. It's got a lot of information in there. So if ever you're curious about what any of these commands does, use the context help and then click on it. Here's another thing worth finding in here. We've got the command finder. I mean, this is going to be really crucial for people starting out. So if, for example, what this is basically, it's Google for Solid Edge. If, for example, I know that there's a command I want to try, it has something to do with the word loft, for example, and I don't know much more about that, I can type that in there, hit enter, and Solid Edge is going to find me any possible command that has something to do with that, and then mousing over that will show me exactly where in the interface that command lies. So you never have to worry about remembering where things are. And even as a very experienced user, I still use this very regularly. So, you know, again, the command finder in this corner is your best way to find commands. I got some questions over here that before we go on to the next thing. Somebody's asking how to customize. Okay, so customizing the interface, the best way to do that is anywhere on the toolbar, just right-click, and you're going to see customize the quick access toolbar, customize the ribbon. Doesn't matter which one you click on because they'll all take you into the customize interface. And then from that, you've got different tabs that you can access to customize either the keyboard shortcuts, the quick access toolbar, which is this little guy along here. You can add your own commands that are always up along this bar here, or the ribbon. And it's a pretty straightforward process of creating new ribbon menus and adding commands to them just by selecting them from these lists and adding them into the ribbons. And then you can save different themes so that, you know, I can toggle back and forth between different themes using this drop-down menu. I can also create a theme and share it with my coworkers. The last thing to customize is the radial menu. I haven't talked about this, but this is a great tool. Basically, if you hold down right-click anywhere in the design environment, you have quick commands right at your fingertips. And these can all be customized by dragging new commands into them using that customize. Let's just check. Got one more question here. How do you cancel an invoked command? And this is a great question because you're going to do this a lot. So if I start a command, like let's say the extrude command, you see that this ribbon bar will open up showing me the steps to complete the command. And it'll expect me to work through that. If I want to get out, there's two great ways to do that. You can either hit escape, and that will bring you back to your select tool, which is kind of your neutral ground, or you can just reach over and click on your select tool. And I like to have my select tool on my quick access toolbar. If I hold down right click, there's select right there. So it's a nice quick way to cancel a command without reaching up and hitting escape or dragging my mouse across the screen. So again, to cancel a command, click select or hit escape. All right. So now that we've got kind of the bearings of how to navigate in Solid Edge, let's go and I just want to walk you guys through, you know, what it looks like to create a very simple model. So again, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to new, and again, I could pick from my default templates or I could click directly on new to access more of these templates, but I'm going to create a new ANSI part. And afterwards, you know, when you guys get the recording, you can try this out and follow on because this is pretty straightforward. What we want to make, and I'll just bring up a picture here, we want to make a very simple hub part, and then we want to create some drawings. And this just will show you guys kind of, you know, how the steps work to create a part file. So here in the Solid Edge interface, I'm in my part interface here, and I'm going to reach up to my sketch tools, and I'm going to select circle by center point. Notice that in Solid Edge, if you see these little down arrows next to a command, clicking on them will bring up variations of that command. So you see we have circle by 3 points. We can even draw ellipses. So there's a lot of different commands hidden under those, what we call button stacks. I'm going to select the first one, which is circle by center point. And you see that I got these crosshairs. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up to my origin, and Solid Edge will kind of want to snap to that origin and even give me a feedback with a little endpoint marker telling me that I've clicked on the origin. So I'm going to click once, left click, to start my circle. and I can dynamically drag it out any size I want. You see also up in my ribbon bar on the top left-hand corner, it's prompting me to actually key in a value. Now you don't have to do that in Solid Edge. The idea is to kind of get the general shape of your part out and then refine those dimensions. So I'm going to draw it, roughly that wide. And I'm still in my circle command. I'm going to click again on the center to create another circle and click to place it. Now I'll reach up and go back to my select command. I'm back to neutral ground. So I've got two circles kind of drawn on a plane in 3D space. And if I mouse over them with my select command, you see that the regions that they've created highlight. I can click on one of those regions and I'm given this arrow that kind of points perpendicular to the plane of the region. And that arrow is prompting me to take that 2D profile that I've created, this 2D region, and extrude it out into 3D. So clicking on either of these two will highlight that region and give me that arrow that I can extrude out. In fact, in this case, I want to extrude both of these at the same time. So I'm just going to click and drag a box around the two of them, and that'll grab both the regions there. And you see I've got that arrow. So I'm going to click on that arrow, and now as my mouse moves, I've just clicked once. I'm not clicking and holding. Very seldom in Solid Edge do you need to click and hold. But I'm just dragging dynamically out. And I can kind of eyeball it, or I can key in a dimension. So I'm going to key in 1/2 inch. And I just type that in, and it's appearing in the center there. So now I've got a 3D body. You can see that I've taken that outer region and extruded it out. I still have a region now on the face of this part. And I'm going to click that and do the exact same thing. Click it once, and then click once to select that arrow and extrude that out. Notice if I push in, it's going to cut that material away. But if I pull out, it will extrude that material out. And again, I'm going to make that 2 inches long. Okay, so we've got the start of a very basic part here. Maybe the next thing I want to do is kind of hammer down what the radii of those two features are. So I'm going to go up here and click Smart Dimension. And this is a command that allows us to add a dimension to an edge of a part. So you'll see as you kind of mouse over, it'll highlight the edges that you're near. I'm going to click on this edge, and I'm going to click just once, and that's going to put a dimension on the end of my cursor. And I can move my mouse around and change kind of how that dimension would be displayed or where it's going to lie in 3D space. And clicking again will place that dimension. With the dimension placed, it's going to prompt me to change it. Right now it's set to 4.618 inches because that was what I just kind of randomly dragged that circle out to. And it's showing me the edges that it's going to modify. So if I change that to 4, we'll see that part change. I'm just going to zoom in a bit, and again, lots of ways we can zoom in. I'm going to use the zoom box and just get a little closer here. And again, I'll right-click. Here's another way to cancel an invoked command. Right-click will take you back to whatever you were in before. Okay, so I'm still in the Smart Dimension command. You can see it's still highlighted. I've still got my Smart Dimension options box here. I'm going to click now on this, click once on this edge here. So again, I'll click once, the dimension's on the end of my cursor, and I can click anywhere to place it. And then I'm going to change that dimension to 1.5. Okay, so you see I've added a little bit more precision into my model. The next thing I want to do is put a hole on this face here. So I'm going to go up to the hole command. It's right here. Now, in the hole command, you notice that I've got this hole on the end of my cursor. And as I kind of bring it around, you'll see it'll want to snap to whatever face I put it near to. It'll say, okay, well, do you want to put a hole, into the round face of this part? Do you want to put a hole on the end here? I want a hole on this face. And when I decided that, you see that I got this little lock button that appears. If I click that, that'll lock so that that hole no longer, it's stuck on that face. It's not going to snap to other faces. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to position it with a little more precision. You see that as I move my mouse close to the center of the plate here, it's going to highlight an edge that it says, well, do you want to snap that to be in line with the center point? And that's exactly what I want to do. You see the edge is lit up. It's kind of, the mouse has kind of pulled me in there, and now I can click to snap that in. And now that's placed. Now I can keep placing holes, or again, I can go back to my select or hit escape and cancel that command. Now my hole is placed in there, and it's asking me, it's got my steering wheel on there, which we're not going to go into today, but that would be how I'd further modify the position of this. Instead, what I think I'll do is I'll put a dimension to define the position of this hole. We know that it is vertically lined up with the shaft here. I'm going to go in, and instead of using Smart Dimension, I'm going to use Distance Between. And this works basically the same way, except you click on two things. You click on an edge here, and then you click on another edge. And I'm going to click on just the edge of the shaft because that will snap a dimension to the center points of the two features. Now, I'll click once to place that. And notice that it's ready to adjust, but there's an arrow on my dimension. This arrow is pointing down right now, and the face of the shaft is highlighted. What it's saying is if you change this dimension, I'm going to move the shaft to accommodate that change. I can reverse that because what I actually want to move is the hole, not the shaft. So to reverse that, I'll just hit this button on this side, and that flips the arrow and shows me that the hole is now highlighted. Now that's what will move. And you can see if I kind of roll my mouse wheel over this dimension, it's going to show me the different places. And I want that to be 1.25 inches from the center. So now I have a dimension that has defined the position of that hole. And I'll go back to my select. Last thing I want to do is create a pattern of these holes. We need multiple holes on this hub. So I don't remember where the pattern command is. I do know, though, that I want to select, it's this hole that I want to select. And again, I can select that graphically in the 3D environment or here in my Pathfinder. Pick up on that hole. But that's the hole I want to pattern. To find the pattern command, because I don't remember where it is, I'll go into my command finder and type in pattern. That's all I really know, and hit enter. That's going to show me, well, look at this. I got a lot of different ways I can pattern something. I can create a rectangular pattern. I can pattern along a curve. In this case, I want a circular pattern. So I'm just going to mouse over that, and it's going to show me where on the command bar that circular pattern is. Now I can go and click that, or I can just click on this search result, and that'll start the command. So I'm in the pattern command, and if you're ever at a loss of what to do next, the prompt bar, which is this text bar down here, will always tell you your next step. So it's telling me, click to locate circular pattern axis on a face or a reference plane. So if I just kind of come across here and pick up on that edge, it will snap my axis to the center point of that face, which is exactly what I want. Now it's giving me a count of 10 by default. I'll type that in, and let's say we actually want 6 holes in here. And again, I can click in space to finish that command. So now I've got 6 of these holes. And you see, if I go back to my dimension, and again, click it, make sure that I'm moving the hole, not the shaft, because that's what I want this time, so the arrow's pointing in the right direction. And if I type in, we'll make that 1.313, that's going to move all those holes because they're all tied together as a pattern. So I think we've got exactly what we want on this part. I'm going to go and save it. Lots of ways to do that. We can go up in here and go save. Oh, but before I do, maybe I want to define the material it's made out of. So let's just see what that is. I'm going to go down to Properties, and I'm going to go up here to Material Table. And this is how we access our parts. Because I use this command a lot, I'm just going to right-click on this and go Add to Quick Access Toolbar, and that'll put that command right here on this toolbar that's always available to me. So again, the material command, and I don't have to do this now because it's on my quick access, but just to show you, it's in the application button under Properties, Material Table. Again, you can find this with the command finder as well. So right now, this is made out of cold rolled 1020 steel. I can change this to another type of steel, and that'll update things like the density, thermal conductivity, all that physical properties. I'll hit Apply to Model, and that will go and make those changes to the part. And depending on what you pick, it may even change the appearance. You see, we've got kind of a grainier finish because that's what I've defined as hot rolled steel. We can also then go into Inspect under Physical Properties and update the mass. And you see that this part weighs 2.73 pounds. Right now I've got some good feedback data about this part. So with that done, I'm going to go and save this into my application window, or button, Save, and I'll call this Hub. Okay, now I want to make a drawing of this so that it can be manufactured. So I'm going to go, there's lots of ways you could do this. We could go new and create a brand new, we could make a new drawing file and bring this 3D model into that drawing file. Or there's a bit of a shortcut down here, which is the Create Drawing command. That creates a new drawing from the current model. So if I click that, it's going to ask me, which template I want to use. And this is where you could browse to your company template. Maybe you have something that has your company background on it. You can definitely create them in Solid Edge. You can even import AutoCAD backgrounds. In this case, I'm just going to go with my standard ANSI draft file, and it's going to open up this new 2D environment. and then it's going to ask me questions about how I want this displayed. So in this first window, all the defaults are generally fine. I want the design part. I want to show hidden edges and orthographic views. I'll hit next. Now it's going to ask me what view orientation I want to start with. And I'm going to pick the front view. That's sort of looking face on. If I'm not sure what the front is, I can hit this custom button and it'll show me the view I'm in. I could also use the same tools that we use to rotate and pan to create a custom view that we want to start as our base view. But this is the one I want, so I'm going to hit close. Now, this last step is where I add additional drawing views. So there's my center view. I'm going to highlight the other views I want. I want a top and a side view as well as an isometric. And I'm going to hit finish. And now on the end of my cursor, I've got this block which represents the placement of my drawing views. So I'm going to kind of eyeball where that's going to be and click once, and that's going to place those drawing views for me. So I've got these in 3D space. To position these, you want to kind of mouse over the drawing, and you kind of have to get an edge so that it highlights, and then you can click and drag. And what you want to notice is that anything orthographic is going to maintain its orientation relative to one another, whereas isometrics are kind of free to go off on their own. You can also, with one highlighted, again, you have this toolbar which is very consistent and solid edge. You can change, for example, the scale of one of these drawings. So maybe we want a big isometric view and then our production views over here. Alright, so we can do a lot with this 2D view. Again, we've got the same commands like Smart Dimension, which will allow us to detail the drawing. I can click on that hole and it will give me the dimension of that hole. If I want to, you remember I already placed dimensions in 3D while I was designing this. We have the Retrieve Dimension command, which will grab these dimensions that we used and place them in the 3D or in the orthographic drawing views. I can then go back to my select tool and kind of click and drag these to kind of better position them in 3D space. I can also change this view into a rendered view. So right now it's just showing a wireframe. I want to go and call it shaded with edges. And when I do that, it's going to put this box saying that the drawing needs to be updated. It needs to retrieve some information from the 3D model. So I'll hit Update View here, and that will bring in all of that texture detail that we have. Maybe the last thing I want to do is put some center lines and center marks in here. So I'm going to go to the automatic center line because that's a nice fast way of doing that. And clicking on these drawing views, it's going to automatically put center lines and center marks in all my drawings. So you can see you can kind of quickly detail the views. I'm going to go back into my part just with the Switch Windows command. There's my 3D part. And the last thing I want to do is just show you, if we change the part in 3D, the 2D drawing will update automatically. So let's go and create another distance between, and this time I'm going to click the back edge of this and then the very leading edge of this protrusion. And I'm going to drop a dimension. You see that that's 2.5. That makes sense because I had a half an inch thick protrusion here, and then I made the shaft 2 inches long. So I want to change that to 3, and again it's going to prompt me to make that change. Which face are you going to move? And I want to extend the shaft to make that. So I'll make that 3 inches. And it's gone and made that change for me. Going back into my drawing, and again that's the Switch Window command into the draft, it's going to notify me immediately that one or more of the views is out of date. So I'll click OK. It shows me which of the views are out of date. In this case it's all of them. And then hitting Update View will show me what has changed. So it says that this used to be a 2-inch dimension, now it's a 2.5-inch dimension, because as you recall, I made that 3 inches total thickness by changing the length of that shaft. So you can even click Find to zoom in on the dimension and see. But what this is it's a good way to track changes. So when I'm done with that, I can clear them all, and my drawing has updated. So that's kind of an overview of the interface and how these work. What I would do then is, of course, save this drawing, save it as my hub draft, and now any changes I make to that 3D part will be updated here in the 2D environment. So I'm going to stop the recording now and open it up for questions. We got about 15 minutes here. You can key in a question into the chat window at the bottom, or you can just speak up if you've got a microphone or if you've connected via telephone and ask a question. So I'm stopping recording now.